Hi. Recently, I've seen a couple of streamers trying out integrated dynamics for the first time and having a rough start understanding some of the basic blocks in it. It's not really unusual. ID is a very technical, very fussy mod. So I put this together to show a semi-practical use for the tools that the people were looking at in those streams, and I'm going to do something that's actually semi-useful to the back they were playing. And I will keep things as simple as I possibly can, but there is a basic minimum amount of complexity built into integrated dynamics, and so hopefully I can still make it clear. Now, the pack in question is The Rise of Newstone Hollow by Aradauer and Mr. Wiggly, but everything I'm going to talk about here does apply to ID in general. The relevant part about that pack, though, is you need a lot of honey early, and although it has some automated easy mob farms, they only make honey if you use a lot of very specific upgrades, and even then it's not very fast, so you might be tempted, maybe I'll just automate some vanilla beehives. And that's when you discover that automating them is actually quite complicated because of how complicated they are in vanilla Minecraft. But complicated things are something that integrated dynamics can easily, well, not easily, can help with. And so I am going to do just that. First, some bee basics. Bees fly out of their hive or nest. Everything I say about hives also applies to nests. Bees fly out of the hive, they find some flower to sniff at, they get covered in pollen, and they fly back in. When they come out again, they leave the pollen behind, and they increase the hive's honey level by 1. Once the honey level reaches 5, you can use shears on it to get beeswax, or you can use an empty bottle to get honey. If you do this by hand, the bees will get angry and come out and sting you if you don't have smoke from a campfire blowing past the beehive. But you can also automate it with a dispenser, and as a free bonus, dispensers don't need smoke. So here's an example setup. Here I have a dispenser loaded up with some empty glass bottles. It is pointed down at a beehive that's full of happy little bees. So what I need to do now is send a redstone signal into the dispenser to dispense one of the bottles against the beehive when it's full. And I specifically need to wait until it's full, because if the beehive is not full of honey and the dispenser uses a bottle on it, it just dumps the bottle on the ground. So I will come over here, take the parts I need. I will need a redstone reader on the hive to read the honey level, and I will need a redstone writer on the dispenser to send it activating signals, and I will need logic cable connecting them. And the reason the redstone reader can read the honey level is that that is something a vanilla comparator can do. Comparators, when you put the back again against chests or tanks or batteries, they can generally tell you percentage-wise how full it is, but there are a couple of other blocks they can also read the status of. In the case of hives, the honey level is the strength of the redstone signal. 0 honey means a 0 strength signal, 1 honey is strength 1, 2 is 2, and so on all the way up to 5. You can see power 5 on this comparator. And one of the things that the redstone reader can do is imitate a vanilla comparator if you use the comparator option down here. So I'm going to program one variable card to be the comparator output of this hive. And important thing, this is a real-time reading. If the honey level of this hive changes, the variable changes. Now that I have a card that tells me the honey level, I need to activate the dispenser when the honey level is 5. I'm going to use this option, the top one on the redstone writer, which sends its signal only when a certain condition is true. So now I'm going to make a card that's true when the honey level is 5. Well, I have a variable for the honey level. I can only compare a card to another card, so I'm also going to need a card for the number 5. To do that, I'm going to need this logic programmer, which can go anywhere, and I specifically need the integer 5, and that is down here. You can tell it's orange. That's kind of a clue. There's an orange border around this telling me I'm using an integer number, which doesn't have any decimal places. I'm going to type in a 5. I'm going to program this variable card to be the number 5. Cool. I have a card that tells me the honey level of that hive. I have a card that's 5. Now I need to compare them. That is an expression down here. Double equals. programmers use a double equals to signify a test all the time. So I'm going to test for equality between the honey level card and the 5 card, and that is now an expression in this third variable card. I now have a variable card that is true when the honey level is equals 5 and false when it isn't. That's what I need to put in the writer on this top redstone option, which will send a signal when this expression is true, and I get a big red X and some angry error text. What does that say? Variables with ID 3 and 4 could not be found within the current network. Well, that's true. This card is built from the values of other cards. It's comparing this card in my hand and this card to see if they're equal. The thing is, they're in my pocket, and it can't read cards that are in my pocket. Any lower level variable cards that this is referring to have to be in the same network and connected through this cable. How do we fix that? That's what the variable store is for. That's what it does. That's all it does. When you build complicated expressions from earlier cards, you have to put the earlier cards in a variable store that's on the same network. And that way the final expression can check what their values are. So now we have a green check and everything is working, and the honey level is 1. Through the magic of video editing, I'm going to wait until that's 5. And we now have 1 honey bottle in the dispenser. We are more than halfway done. That was the complicated part. That involved a lot of new concepts, a lot of new tools, and things you've probably never used before. We're more than halfway done, but we're not all done. We still have to get the honey out. Now, and that's when you discover the second complicated part about vanilla honey automation. Where does the honey go? The honey goes into the dispenser if there is room, or gets thrown on the floor if there isn't. So unless you want to build 2 different collection systems, the smart thing to do is make sure that only one of those ever happens. Now, you could make sure that there's never room for the honey, and the honey always gets thrown on the ground and you pick it up with some kind of area hopper. Or you can make sure there's always room and you immediately pipe the honey out of the dispenser without taking any of the empty bottles. Now, there are tons of ways to do both of those, and I am not going to recommend any of them. Do what is easiest for you, do what's most familiar. For this demonstration, I am going to do it the second way, and of course, I'm going to use integrated dynamics. Barrel, item importer, item exporter, some more cards. Build the item importer against the dispenser. A couple of cables out. Item exporter here. Now I only want to take out the honey bottles, so I go back to my logic programmer. I make an item card for honey bottles, program that variable, put that in the import item because there is only one type of item I want to import. And at the export end, I will just put an export items variable card. It doesn't even have to be programmed with true, just having a card works. And nothing happens. I've seen other streamers do this. I have done this. This does not work. Integrated dynamics cannot send things straight from an importer to an exporter. Why? Well, the simple answer is it just can't. The technical answer is it can bring things into a system, it can send things out of a system, but it cannot send items directly from one external container to another without ever touching it. And the cable doesn't count. Quickest way to remedy this is don't use an exporter, use an item interface. And now you can see that's already in here. This barrel is no longer an external destination. It is part of the system. And that's why this works. And that's it. I have fully automated the collection of vanilla honey with integrated dynamics, And hopefully this has demonstrated what a variable store is, why you would use a Redstone reader, and why importing to an exporter doesn't work and how to fix it. Hope you learned something, hope it's clear, and watch out for those robots.